It's a tough break. Tough break.
I don't even think I want to do the show tonight, Daniel.
Mate, it's one loss.
I just don't want to do the show.
We've been good all year.
I don't want to do the show tonight, Daniel.
All right, you big baby.
I wasn't serious, Daniel.
Well, now that he's gone, I better bring someone else in. This is a professional show, mate. You can't be wearing that. Or that. Or that. How many of these have you got?
I think this is the last one.
All right then. Welcome back to this week's edition of Rugby League Outlaws. As always, we're brought to you by our great friends at Top Sport, onelittlefootyfan.com.au, and of course the Stubby Club. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever possible. They are great people. Look, as you may have noticed, I have banished Terry to Thailand for 2 weeks, which is a holiday for me more than it is for him. But I needed a co-host, so I have brought my good friend Stegs, who you may remember from...
Off-season Outlaws, the cricket edition.
That's right, Off-Season Outlaws. Make sure you jump back and watch those shows. Mate, look, it is a happy sweet 16th to the Newcastle Knights. 16th position, they are last, right where they should be. Talk to me, Newcastle.
I think you've summed it up pretty well there. One of the big things I've noticed in the last couple of weeks is an absence, you might say, in the halves. Now, I'm a Dragons fan. Surprise, surprise. We'll get onto that later. When Adam Clune was signed, I thought it'd be a good move for him. It wasn't going to be a long stay in the halves at the Dragons. I was happy for him to get some game time somewhere. The big problem is that Clune and Clifford, it's just not working. The ship's not being steered around. There's all the pieces there, but it's just not coming together. And the last couple of weeks in particular.
Mate, it's a good point. Adam Clune, not the worst signing in the world. Jake Clifford had a very, very good start at Newcastle. But the problem is when you got two players that are both alike, and in this case, bad at football, of course you're not going to score any points. And you got Kalen Ponga, who's, whatever, he signed his contract. There's no excuse anymore, and he played a little bit better this past weekend, but he's still not the Kalen Ponga of old. Mate, where do the points come from?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You can look at the absence of Pearce. You can look at the absence of Brayley and hooker. Randall's doing an all right job, but again, it's a downgrade. Clune's a downgrade from Pearce. But everywhere else, Gagai, you look at the forward pack is still quite strong. Yeah, there's some big questions that need to be answered up in Steel City. Huge
questions. Look, Bradman Best, they got to work out how to get him in the game. Look, there's a nice little natural segue here. Newcastle coach Adam O'Brien under pressure. Now, we like to do a weekly sack race where we talk about the coaches that we think are going to get the flick. The Madgem guys, etc. They're flying at the moment. Your bloke, what's his face? Look, for me, Adam O'Brien, Ricky Stewart and Garth Brennan are leading the sack race.
I'm not so sure about O'Brien and Brennan. Brennan's probably closer to the sack than O'Brien is. But Mr. Stewart down in Canberra, there's some problems there. But I don't know whether Ricky is the problem. Let me put something to you. One of the biggest problems in sport in general is not the skills out on the field. It's not whether I can pass the ball or kick it or defend.
He can't.
Thanks. It's all up here in the head. And I think Canberra at the moment are in a spot where the confidence is low. And so a team gets a try against you, here we go again, and you kind of can get that sort of spiral, momentum effect, and things get out of control very quickly. I think add into that the fact that Fogarty still hasn't played a premiership game for them.
That's fickle.
And Hodgson's been out injured. Tom Starling's been quite good at hooker, and you can see why they were not too worried about Hodgson moving on at the end of the season. But there's just some things, and I think there's got to be a different voice that can get through, because you were saying before, Ricky's only got one note at the moment, and it's angry.
Yells or yells louder.
Yeah.
But,
and I don't think that's getting through to the players. It's definitely not working with the fans because they're not very happy. And yeah, time could be coming. Ricky's been down there for a while.
He certainly has. It's his side. He's built everything around his way of football, which has been successful at teams at the Roosters. He took a very ordinary Cronulla side to a prelim final. Now, we did get walloped by a far superior Melbourne Storm, although they got walloped the week after. So, you know, we try not to think. We look forward rather than backwards. But look, I think Ricky Stewart does only have one note, and is to yell. Players just aren't responding, and they're fading out every single week. Even at 14-0 up, you're thinking, it's not enough. They're going to need another 14 points the second half. You're not going to catch me crying too many tears for Canberra, but I think as it stands right now, if any coach is going to get the sack, it's Ricky Stewart.
I don't think you can argue that, especially with the turnaround we've seen at places like the West Tigers. I know that's probably eating away at you more than Canberra.
A little bit. Had to eat a bit of crow last 2 weeks, and I don't like the taste.
But yeah, I think if you wanted to look and say there's someone who's going to get sacked in the next maybe 4 to 6 weeks, Ricky Stewart's at the top of that list.
Let's talk about a more positive race, and one that's really lit up in the last few weeks. That is the New South Wales centre position. Now, we think Tommy Turbo is going to be back and fit. He plays. But Trell Mitchell looks like he will not be fit for Origin 1, which begs the question, who replaces him? Now, Stegs, before I let you talk here, mate, I just want to address some comments in the media. They had Sifa Talakai in Origin consideration. Love the bloke, Sharks fan, one of my favourite players. He's not within cooee of an Origin spot.
No, and a mate of ours put out shared an article online after the game against Manly that was really saying strongly that they were expecting Talakai to not just be in the mix but be picked, given that Mitchell's likely to miss out. And I kind of laughed. I had a number of options ahead. And I think when you say it's lit up, there's a lot of good options out there. Now, there's probably 2 or 3 that are at the top of the pile. There's some where you could go back to some previous options, but they maybe haven't been playing as strongly lately. But I think there's probably 2 or 3 that I'd put right out in front at the moment. And I'd probably say you got Crichton at Penrith, you got Campbell Graham, and I would say Gutho, but that's just because I think he's a sort of guy who can thrive on the big stage.
It's not bad shout. Now, I want to put Whiten and Gutherson to the side.
Yep.
I don't want to see either of them line up in the centres again. It's been tried and tested, didn't work at Origin level. The 2 you mentioned, Crichton and Campbell Graham, that's the argument for me. I think you can get rid of Lomax. I don't think he's quite there yet. Talakai, out. I don't care how well he plays this weekend, and he's done very, very well in the centres to put himself in consideration, but he's not at that level. The other player that I want to take and put out is Bradman Best. I don't want to hear his name mentioned. The player that I want to put in is Katoni Staggs.
Yeah, good shout, especially the last couple of weeks. Both sides of the ball, attack and defence, been very strong. And a guy who, say, maybe 2020, lots of talk about him getting up to that next stage of rep honours. He'd gone away for a while. He was in the wilderness for quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
But he has come back strong the last couple of weeks. Could fall into the problem of Talakai of a couple of strong games and everyone's going to talk him up but then drops off.
Possibly.
But he's probably that number 3 in the list. Graham and Crichton would be the front runners there. And I'd be very happy with either of them.
No pressure. Who are you picking?
If in doubt, go with the Premier side. So I'd probably go Crichton.
I agree with Crichton. He's a grand final winner. I think that's as much as you need to say.
Yeah.
The big talking point coming out of the weekend, though, was the Carl Lawton send-off. Send-off or not?
Yes, send-off. Say more?
Yep.
Yeah, I should say more.
Say more.
Lots of people online saying, oh, there's no intent, you need intent. It doesn't matter. It was a dangerous tackle. The biggest thing was Lawton did not have control of Cameron Murray once he picked him up. Once he picked up and started going, you could see that the only thing that stopped Murray from getting a serious injury was Murray tucking himself and getting himself into a better position. I was really interested listening to the Fox commentators. Ganane and Mick Ennis. And I got to say, big props to Mick Ennis for being pretty clear in saying at first it's probably a sin bin, but then they showed another angle and he's like, oh no, I think he's in trouble here. I then went and thought, oh, I wonder what the guys on Channel 9 are saying about it. And flicked over and heard them saying, oh, it was never a send-off. Channel 9 commentators have no idea of the laws of the game of rugby league. And that was shown very clearly on Friday night. It was a send-off, no ifs, buts or maybes about it. The fact that Lawton's facing 4 to 5 weeks, I might have graded it just a little bit higher than that. I might have thought in the 6 to 8 realm, but I'm not upset with 4 to 5 weeks being what he's in store for that. So send-off, pretty reasonably graded. The judiciary, I'm fairly happy with the outcome.
I think you've hit it on the head. Now, I did see some people on Twitter comment that, there's a huge difference between this and what Mitch Barnett did. Yes, and you will see that after the fact. Both the send-offs, doesn't matter if it was on purpose or not. Barnett got 8 weeks, should have been more. Lawton showed remorse. It was a clear accident, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. The bloke could have been awful, it could have been tragic.
Yeah.
And it was a send-off, and I think props to the referee for having the fortitude to send him off, because I immediately thought, he's going to sit down for 10. And then I saw the tackle again from the Ennis angle, and it was a stone-cold send-off. Look, I think we bag the referees enough, and they give us enough reason to. When they get it right, let's give them the thumbs up.
Yeah.
Talk to me, Stegs.
Oh, sorry. Sharks. I got 2 words. What happened?
Remember when we rinsed you guys? That was fun. Look, we're here to talk football, more specifically the Cronulla Southern Sharks. Now, for those joining in, this guy right here is a Dragons fan. Do not hold it against him.
I don't know where they would have got that idea from.
Oh, I know. But look, he's going to bring an outsider view, which is sometimes good. Look, Sharks on Thursday night were pretty ordinary. I think it's fair to say. I think Nicho Hynes had the worst game of his career. I think the players looked exhausted, and I thought, why do they look so tired? Then I remembered that they played 3 games in 11 days, including 2 interstate trips, 2 teams that are very up in your face and forceful in their defence. Not the end of the world for mine.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think one of the markers of a top quality side is being able to get the wins even when you're tired, even when things aren't necessarily going the way you would want them to. And I think you look at sides like Melbourne, sides like Penrith, particularly Penrith on the weekend against Gold Coast.
Yeah, they were pretty terrible and still won the counter.
Yeah. The Sharks, tired, and the decision-making that was coming through. Hynes in the second half, he looked like someone who was trying to win the game by himself. Whether that was because he didn't feel like he could trust the players around him, or whether he felt the pressure of, I'm the guy, I need to do this, I don't know exactly. But yeah, it was kind of a bit of a lackluster performance across the board. All that being said, credit to the Broncos. They turned up, and Adam Reynolds in the last couple of weeks has been steering that side around the park like an absolute master and getting the best out of some young up-and-coming talent. So...
Look, Cronulla are very much... We're still in a build phase. This isn't the team that's going to win the premiership. Next year we will.
No.
Now, look, Nicho Hynes, you're right. He tried to win it off his own back in the second half because that's who Nicho is. He's had it his way all his career. He'll learn from this. This is an inexperienced halfback we're talking about. An inexperienced coach, which I think really showed in his bench rotation. Now, look, I love Wade Graham. He's one of my favourite players of all time. If you ask me to pick a Sharks best 13 in history, he's one of the first players I pick. And I say that with no... that's a thing. That's
fair.
That's fact. But he was underdone and shouldn't have been there on the weekend. I don't think playing a third wide running forward or a fourth with Talakai there worked at all. I think it completely messed up the time the middles played. I think Braden Trindle, this experiment's got to finish because he played about 7 minutes and offered very little. And not necessarily his fault. It's the role he's been asked to play. But you can't tell me a Lockie Miller can't be thrown in there and have 10 minutes to rip up some tired middle forwards. The bench rotation was awful. The side just wasn't right. They were tired. This is a game that, you're right, we should have won and the good teams do. I'm going to put in the well basket. If we come out and smash the Warriors by 20 points next week, this will be quickly forgotten.
Yeah. I think your point about that kind of number 14 role on the bench, lots of teams feel like they need to carry that player, but you don't actually really know how they should work.
Well, is he there to cover an injury? I mean, Moylan was our best player by a mile on the weekend. Now, his fitness, historically has not been very good. Or his injuries, I should say. He's always been supremely fit. Good-looking bloke too, just quietly. But, Trindle, I'm very high on Trindle. I've been on record saying that numerous times. He's making me look bad because he's not living up to the first grade standard. But this is a kid who has, 20 games on and to his name, and you go on and win the game against Brisbane, win down by 12, and when he doesn't, you're like, you didn't... What does he want? Now, I love Sir Fitz. There's a tattoo on my back. I'll show you guys later. That'll be true one day, trust me. But I don't get it. I don't want to question the great man, but I think he got it wrong this week. Yeah. And I think we have to learn from it moving forward.
Yeah. And to come back to Trindle, when a player like that comes out on the field to play, where's he playing? How are you structuring the side? Like, he doesn't come on as a typical 13, but he's not playing in the halves like his natural spot is. He's not playing hooker.
It's just there.
Yeah, and a player that's just there, it often just gets in the way.
He did get in the way. Now, I would argue that... Now, don't get me wrong. New South Wales Cup's not the be-all and end-all. But this is a guy who has the talent to play regular first grade. Yeah. Would you rather him 7 minutes playing in a role that's not defined or playing 80 minutes for Newtown against the Panthers, who would lead in the comp, look like they're going to do some real damage? I want him playing 80 for Newtown.
Yeah, St George Illawarra looking pretty strong in the New South Wales Cup
too. Look, they are, but I think we rinsed in that too, just quietly.
I can't remember.
No, it's all those weeks ago.
But to answer your question, New South Wales Cup is a decent competition. If you're a halves player, you want to be in the halves wherever you're playing. Get him for 80 minutes. Bring him up every now and then to try and do a bench utility role. But if you're going to do that, you got to get him out there with some significant time. This is where the problem of McInnes comes in for you. Because realistically, what you should be doing is carrying 4 forwards, and McInnes becomes the utility guy, because you can play him at 9, you can play him at 13. I reckon you could probably play him in the halves if you're in a pinch. You could probably play him at fullback and he'd give you a damn good service there.
He'd put in, absolutely.
He'd absolutely put in. And so I think if you really try to say, we want someone who can cover a few spots, you've already got the guy there at number 13.
It's very, very fair. Look, I think lessons will be learned. I think we'll learn from this. But something that did become apparent was Sifa Talakai had the game of all games, or should I say the first halves of all first halves last week. Now, he was still pretty good on the weekend. Stats-wise, he was better than Katoni Staggs. But the eye test says Katoni beat him.
Yeah, the fantasy world that dominates a lot of the conversation about games can really change a perspective on things. Because realistically, you look at Staggs v Talakai, and if it was a boxing round, Staggs probably won 10-8, maybe even 10-7.
Yeah, he comprehensively won. And I'm not having to go at Talakai by any stretch. This will be the biggest. Like, he bodied Dane Gagai a couple of weeks ago, and Gagai's one of the best centres of the past decade. You know, last week he beat up on a centre. He came back from COVID and isn't the best defensive player. And then we stopped going to him in the second half. This game, every time he got the ball, Staggs was in his face. Because they looked at last week's game and said, this is what Cronulla are going to do. There was no plan B. I don't blame Talakai at all. He did his absolute best. But his future is in the middle, where he can get as much space and he can run from the back fence. He's going to cause a lot of problems. But I am very, very confident that he's going to watch this. He's going to want to come out and feed me some crow, mate, and just run right against the Warriors.
Yeah. If he wants to get into that mix, the big thing he's going to have to do is produce game after game after game after game after game, and not just run over Morgan Harper.
Look, exactly right. You need more than 3 good games in a row. And don't get me wrong, they were a good 3 games. But, I want to put all this talk of Origin, this premiership. Everyone keeps saying it feels like 2016. It feels like 2018. We're good enough to spank the terrible sides, but there's going to be times when we lose games. It's a young side. We've got a young coach. We'll win the comp next year, and we'll definitely win it again before the Dragons.
For my favourite time of the week, and that's for Top Sport Tips, brought to you by our great mates at Top Sport. Look, we absolutely had a stinker this week, so bad so that we only picked a perfect round between the both of us. But let's see what we've got in store for this week.
Thanks, Terry. We open with a Thursday night blockbuster, the Bunnies and the Broncos.
Wayne Bennett Memorial Cup.
Look, that's true. The Lovelies like the Broncos versus side piece, the Bunnies. Look it up. As you were saying, Stegs?
Wayne Bennett Memorial Cup.
That's it. Look, the Bunnies at home against the Broncos. Look, neither team are in tremendous form, but both coming off wins. Who's your tip and why?
If the Bunnies had had a more dominant effort against Manly, I would have been saying them definitely. They've still got their issues in the halves and getting that all working, and Brisbane are coming good.
Adam Reynolds, will he be out for revenge?
Maybe not revenge, but he'd like to get people eating a bit of crow.
Look, certainly would. Look, I'm going to tip the Bunnies here. I'm pretty confident in this, but I was also pretty confident the Sharks were going to beat Brisbane too.
Yeah, I'm leaning Bunnies probably by, let's say, 6.
6, I'll go 8.
Dan, you sent me on a little slice of luxury around the world this time, but look, this game isn't going to be too luxurious, and obviously I'm talking about the Canberra Raiders and the Canterbury Bulldogs. This game's going to be dull and boring, probably be the game of the round now, but I'm expecting a big bounce back from Ricky Stewart and the Raiders, but I've been expecting that for a while now. I just think they have too much attack for the Dogs. The Dogs' defence has held pretty strong and a good win against the Roosters as well, but I think that was more driven on pride, passion and energy in that game. The Raiders are under the pump now, third last, won't want to keep this trend happening. For Ricky Stewart, though, he's under big pressure. The Raiders are under big pressure. I'm expecting them to get this done against the Dogs in a nasty, spiteful game. 1-12, dire contest.
The game of the round. I made sure we got this one. The Penny Panthers host the, well, I was going to say high flying, but the recently humbled Parramatta Eels. Can Penrith continue their 800 wins at home streak?
They should. I hate you, Parramatta. NRL tipping started their streak competition this week. I thought, oh yeah, they'd probably do pretty well against the Cowboys. Don't want to get one of the big teams out early, and then you go and lose to the Cowboys. Thank you very much. Just for that, I hope Penrith beat you by 45.
Look, that's what we run on here, is spite and hatred of other football teams. I can't see anything but a big Penrith win. I'm going to go controversial and say they win 13 plus.
Yeah, look, this game promises to be a bit more fun, Manly and the Tigers. Really looking forward to it. I think, Manly now showing some signs of life. Obviously, the Carl Lawton tackle was pretty poor, but they competed for, 76 minutes with 12 men. Obviously got flogged in the end, whereas the Tigers, really expecting them to produce a bit more against the Dragons. And that's the issue that I have with the Tigers is there's not a lot of points in them. Even when they have won their games, they haven't really been able to kill off the team with a lot of attack. I don't pick Manly in this game. Years gone by, you'd say Manly would absolutely flog them. I think this is going to be a close game. Jackson Hastings' injection back into the Tigers has been really, really good. I just don't think it's going to be enough to get over Manly. DCE will want to bounce back in a big performance from the Sea Eagles. They're still fighting for that top 8 spot at the moment, which is really crucial in the early rounds because it gives you the momentum in the back half of the season. And also that momentum means Tommy Turbo coming back. I pick Manly in this game. Tight contest, but the Tigers just won't have enough to get over the top of them.
The Roosters host the Titans. Pre-season, I talked them up. I convinced Terry. Had everyone buying stock in AJ Brimson, and they've just let me down. Dave Fafita's out for 4 weeks. Not that he was doing much anyways. Are they in this game at all?
Well, considering the way the Roosters played against the Bulldogs, there's a possibility. But
That's a good point.
Realistically, I don't think you're going to see the Roosters play, 2 bad games in a row. I don't think they played terribly against the Dragons, but they didn't get the chocolates there. They've then put in an absolute shocker against the Dogs. I can only see Trent Robertson firing some absolute rockets this week, and the Roosters coming out pretty strong, probably getting up by 16.
Look, that's a fair call. And for those watching at home, someone in the comments, when's the last time the Roosters lost 3 games in a row? Probably 2016, so pretty ordinary then. They wouldn't have lost too many games since. I'm with you. This is the week. I'm officially off the Titans. Roosters by 100.
Look, Cowboys and the Knights is going to be a huge game here, mainly because the Cowboys have got so much momentum. They're sitting third at the moment, and the Knights now last. Look, the Knights are going to want a big bounce-back performance, but going up to Townsville is not going to be easy for them as well, and they're also in dreadful form. The North Queensland Cowboys, on the other hand, they're going from strength to strength, and Todd Payton needs a big tick for turning this team around, because he was a coach that was named at the preseason as one of the most under pressure coaches. The Cowboys have got so much attack in them. Their defence is also really good as well. Kyle Felt has, just rejuvenated himself. Looks like the young Kyle Felt, still really slow. The Cowboys forward pack's taken it to them as well. The Scott Drinkwater bringing back, Hammer coming off the bench. It's a really, really strong Cowboys team, and as you can tell, I'm not real confident in the Knights on this one. I got blagged into tipping them 3 weeks in a row. I haven't tipped them since, and I'm not going to in this game as well. I'm going to pick the Cowboys 13+ as they continue their surge up the ladder.
And then the mighty Melbourne Storm are out to end a 3rd-team season in a row as they play the Dragons. How you feeling? Is in here thumping really hard?
Hey, look, a couple of years ago, I learnt that I can't just tip my side every week. And it was mostly because I'd still tip the Dragons to beat the Storm. And the Dragons almost never beat the Storm. It's down in Melbourne. Storm are an absolute juggernaut at the moment. If the Dragons can keep the Storm under 30 points, I'll be classing that as a win. Realistically, the Dragons' defence has been pretty good the last couple of weeks, but this is going to be a very mighty test. Now, they played really well against Penrith in round 2. Defensively played quite strong, especially in the second half. This will be their biggest test since then. I don't think they'll pass it as well as they did against Penrith. Storm by 12.
Yeah, it pretty much sums up. Look, St George have won 2 games in a row and have looked pretty good, to be totally honest. But they've beaten 2 teams that aren't firing. The Melbourne Storm are firing in every single sense of the word to set up the battle of the mega clubs, Penrith versus the Storm. Melbourne are going to run through the Dragons, sorry to say, with the ease. They're going to rest players for 20 minutes. They're going to go up and want to send a message to Penrith, who ended their season last year before the grand final that we all wanted to see. 3 years in a row it should have been, as we'll see this year. St George, don't even bother.
Dan, there are worse places you could have sent me than beautiful Phuket. And one of those places you could have sent me was the Cronulla Sharks dressing sheds at full time after the Brisbane Broncos diabolical performance. We were expecting the Sharks to go up to Brisbane and put in a complete performance, 80 minutes, high energy, high intensity. We got that for about 20 minutes, and then it was no energy, no creativity. It looked like no one had played together. The only try that we scored was off a bit of Matt Moylan brilliance, and then other than that, there was nothing really doing for us, no creativity. We looked absolutely knackered. A 10-day turnaround time and back at Shark Park on Sunday afternoon should see the Sharks up for a big one. Now, the New Zealand Warriors came back from a deficit to force the game into Golden Point and win against the Canberra Raiders. Not the best performance by the Warriors, but they got the 2 points. I don't know if they're going to have enough against this Cronulla Sharks team, but it depends what team turns up. The boys really needed some rest and recovery this week. Look, it's at Shark Park Sunday afternoon. I'm going to be on Bangalore Road drinking cheap Thailand beers, cheering the Sharks to victory, and I think they're going to bounce back from this and put in a big performance. I'm going to pick them 13+ against the Warriors this week in a game which is going to see Sione Katoa break his try-scoring drought and cross the line for a couple of pies.
Thanks everyone for joining us on this week's Rugby League Outlaws. Just want to thank Stegs for coming on. Look, big thanks again to the sponsors. We're brought to you by Punched Media, our great friends at Top Sport, the Stubby Club, and of course onelittlefootyfan.com.au. Look, Terry's away this week and he'll be away next week because he's really annoyed me the last few shows. Look, trash him in the comments. Don't trash me. I don't deserve it. Terry does. But look, most importantly, as always,
Rugby League, baby!